Yo, what's good, y'all? You dub back here again in 2019. Now, I promise y'all more Star Wars content, right? And I've been alluding to this video for a long time coming. Sorry, adjustment of the camera. Are we good? I've been alluding to this for over a year now, I believe, that I'm going to be addressing the video dealing with the Force, right? Why I believe there is no dark side nor light side. Now I use the dark side in joke and jest. I use that, of course, as a point of reference for a lot of people who are not heavy into the Star Wars lore. Now I will say this: I'm not the most knowledgeable person, but I do love Star Wars. I've loved it since I was a kid. The thing about it is, when you look at it, what is the Force? We'll answer that question. That is a massive, pivotal question as set dealing with this highly debated subject. Number two, what are the light side and dark side, quote unquote? Right? Number three, how is the Force utilized? Okay. Now, let's start all the way back into answering these questions. Let's track. Let's do our due diligence and look at the track record. Now we know, because of the information that's come out, that there were Force sensitive beings who throughout the galaxy who met up on these giant pyramid things, get to this one planet that had two moons, Ashla and Ned. Don't ask me to quote them. I don't have it off the top of my head. But one people represented the light, one represented the dark, the yin and the yang duality. Okay, and they need to be balanced. Now, these are the original Jedi orders, predecessors of the Jedi. The original Jedi orders had to practice balance in order to survive on the planet, which should already be a key emphasis on the reality of the situation. We're not done yet. For those who favor the dark, they were sent to the light leaning moon, and for those who favor the light, they were sent to the dark leaning moon to learn balance. Now, eventually, you have the Jedi who favored the light, and eventually, you have this dark Jedi, and then the Sith Order comes out of the darkness, and they favor that. We go down the line, we see all kinds of differing schools of thought, different types of light side users outside of the Jedi Order, different types of dark side users outside of the Sith Order. Okay. The Sith vary in their forms. Now, let's go to some popular versions of what the dark side is. Popular views. Okay. The dark side, some say, is perversion of the Force itself. I think a lot of the Jedi would kind of lean towards that. They believe it's a corrupting factor. Okay. Some say that the dark side is the negative emotions associated to the Force. Some make that kind of claim. Some say that the dark side, it may be the original, and that the light side itself is a watered down version of the true nature of the Force. Some may say that the dark side is when happens when the individual puts the individual's needs over the group needs in the case of the Force, and the light side is when the group is valued more than the individual. See? So you could probably go into a number of other subsects, but let's address all of these claims. Number one, is the dark side actually a perversion of the Force? How? That would be the first question I would ask for anyone who made that claim. How do you say that? Because of people who were like Darth Sidious who tried to make the Force bow to their whims. Same thing in Darth Plagueis tried to play God with the Force. The Force is an energy or a extra dimensional entity, whatever the case you may be, that cannot just be reigned by mere mortals. It's not how it be. Okay. Now, some will go, well, what about the Force Ghosts? What about the Force Ghosts? We'll get into those, all right, in a bit and address it. You cannot use Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious is a terrible example. Emperor Palpatine is a terrible example of the dark side. You had other dark side users. Dark Reverend used both. He was back and forth between the light and the dark. All right. You have someone like Mace Windu who used in combat Vapad, his form of lightsaber combat, and he used the dark side, if you will, as a battery to enhance his own combat. The dark side leaning of his opponents. Fascinating. Without utilizing the dark side himself, he utilized it as a energy. The dark side for Anakin, before he really truly became Vader, he became more powerful. The same thing with Dooku. They had a greater sense of power. You could say, well, the allure of power, but greater power. Some could say, well, it corrupts faster. Really? Fascinating. Fascinating. You look at it, the dark and the light. The question is, and you look at light side users, there's a lot of similar abilities between the light and the dark. The thing is, those who became corrupted in the dark side gave themselves over, not in the purity of the force, but they gave themselves over to the impurity within themselves, if that makes sense. They wanted what they wanted. You see this happening with light side users too. They're not, above reproach. Both types of force users had problems of arrogance and such. It's just that the dark side users were more focused on personal gain of power rather than many of the light side users because of different creeds that they have. Okay. When you look at the force, you go back to the ancient Jedi Order, you go back to someone like Yoda, who was the light side avatar, quote unquote, and he was pure in the force. When he did his showcase of dark side, he was still pure in the force. That's what he was. He was about the force. He wasn't about controlling the force. He would have been powerful and devastating either way. Now, when you look at someone like Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, he's mentally unstable. And that affects. Now, for those who will say, well, you have to choose one side or the other, it's because a lot of it has to do with your mind state. Look what happened on Vader. Why did he lose to Anakin? Because he mentally wasn't there. Had nothing to do with the dark side. It wasn't because he got lost in the dark side. It's because his mind wasn't right. He wasn't in control of himself. And when one is not in control of himself, one is in a very bad place. You look at Darth Maul. Darth Maul, yes, he could use the dark side, but he didn't rely on it. He didn't become a slave to it, you see. And so the better question is that the force is something outside. People falling to the dark side. You're acting as if the force, while it may ish be a living, you're acting like it's this overwhelming living thing that can control you. But that's not how it works. It's as much spiritual as it is physical when dealing with the force. That's a lot of times why you see them both, the Jedi and Sith, meditate. It's being true to one's own self, understanding. Then you'll have these guys who try to see the future in the Force. And instead of following the way of the Force, they will follow their own personal gain. And I think you'll see throughout this video where I'm getting at. What I'm getting is that you had individuals making their own interpretations, trying to get their own senses of power and accomplishment and prestige by manipulating the force rather than letting the force do its job and gaining greater knowledge and wisdom, greater understanding, you see? And so the force is just the force. The light side, if you want to call it that, is simply more nurturing, caring, those kind of aspects. The dark side is more about passion and doing those kind of emotions. But if you really look at it, the light side, being more powerful than the light, doesn't mean you shut off your emotions. What it means is a different set of emotions. If you will think about the dark side is more, if you get rage and anger, jealousy and those things, those are like unbridled, just a fire, a dark fire blazing. When it comes to the light side, is more of this calming light, more subdued, controlled. And so you can see how the dark side, if you look too long in the dark flame, it will consume. But even though the light side is there, it's still light and it can blind you. Some can say they were looking too far in the light. So if you look too long into either, it's both detrimental. One, a consuming flame, another, a blinding light of quote unquote purity. No, the true nature is the force itself, understanding the force, and not being two on ends of the other, but being in the force. Now, the character like Luke Skywalker is a very interesting case. Luke Skywalker did not go to the dark side, but Luke Skywalker wasn't blinded by the light. Luke Skywalker was one of the Force. You could say, and here's where I'm looking at the purity of the Force. All right, let's look at the Force Ghosts because they're prime examples of what I mean by the Force is just the Force. Qui-Gon Jinn was a great Jedi. All right, he was still a Jedi, but he did not rock with the Jedi Council. He became first Force Ghost that we know of. Right? Obi-Wan Kenobi, who in his old age learned wisdom, probably got knowledge from Qui-Gon Jinn, his own master, but became more about the Force. He becomes a Force Ghost. Yoda was pure in the Force, becomes a Force Ghost. Anakin was pure in the Force. Even though he was dark side for all those time, all the years, because the dark side is still part of the Force. They become pure in the Force. Luke, pure in the Force. Now, you look at the Sith of old. A lot of those guys were not pure in the Force. They were trying to hold on to their lives. They were trying to find immortality. They were not pure. Do I think a dark side user can become a Force Ghost? Absolutely. So I could say, well, that's heretical. Based on what? We have Qui-Gon Jinn, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, formerly Darth Vader, and Luke Skywalker, who are all different views on the Force. But the only connective factor is the fact that they were all pure in the Force. They were all pure in the Force. You look at the ancient Jedi Order, they were about the Force, both balance of the Force. It's just the Force. And all these other interpretations are mere mortal interpretations to distract you from that ever present truth, that duality in life, if you want to call it, or just the spectrum, if you want to view it like that. You could view it a duality, a spectrum. You could view it as just a continuum. You can view it as the emotional states of a person, the mental states of a person. You can view it as nature itself. And as there is darkness, there is light. As there is male, there is female. As there is, death, there is birth. You can look at it like that. You can look at the positive and the negative of a battery, of even the atomic structure. You have the protons and the electrons, but then you have the neutrons as well. So, this is my view of the Force. The Force just is. And the light side and dark side are just different interpretations of the Force. Those who go to the dark generally try to control what is the uncontrollable. Pure and simple. Like I said, the dark side is a dark flame that can become a consuming fire if you allow it to. And the light side is a soft, blinding bright light if you allow it to. But if you become pure in the Force and understand the Force, no matter what side you fall on, quote unquote side, you won't get lost in the sauce. Unexpected one to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts. And if you want me to do further breakdowns on things like this and concepts and different forms of fiction, let me know. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful day, beautiful night. Peace.